all you need for wedding photography in 2023. Of course, this is just my perspective of how I shoot. There are many different ways photographers could shoot a wedding, and this is the way I've evolved my system over the 12 years I've been shooting weddings. When you see videos or other photographers saying, this is the must-have lens, this is the must-have body, you must get this is the only way to shoot. They're talking about their perspective and what works for them, their style, their approach. If you're in the Midlands in the UK, don't watch this because this is how I shoot. But I realise this is an international audience that might find this useful. So if you're in the Midlands, turn away. So this isn't a Nikon based video, although I do use Nikon equipment, obviously. But this kind of applies to any brand and any make, because they all make pretty much the same focal lengths and equipment. And my equipment and my technique has evolved over every year to the point it is now, and it'll keep on evolving and changing with my photography style and with the technology available. So let's talk camera bodies. So now I'm on the mirrorless system. Most of my wedding photography career I've been on DSLRs, and DSLRs are perfectly capable of capturing weddings. I had the D850, and the advantages with mirrorless, which I jumped to, is for the electronic viewfinder. So when things are changing quite quickly in front of you, going indoor, outdoor, the light's changing, electronic viewfinder is so good because you can see it as it changes. When you're in the heat of the moment, it's hard to remember all the settings and everything going on with your camera, as well as dealing with people and the situation. So electronic viewfinders are amazing, that you get 2 card slots. And well, most of the time you're not going to need it, but it's like having a seatbelt. Most of the time you don't need it, but then when you do, you really need it. It makes you feel a bit more confident with a wedding and a shoot that you know you've got a backup. And well, touch wood, I've never had a memory card fail at all. I've never needed that backup in, maybe once I've used it in 12 years. Because it's often down to human error. You're tired at the end of the day, you're backing up the photos or you're deleting memory cards. You think, oh, have I done it? And I soon realised 2 bodies are really essential for wedding photography to give you not only a backup, but a different kind of look and a different angle for a lens. So actually, I use 3 mirrorless cameras now from Nikon. Every brand is good now. You don't need a particular brand. No one brand is better than another for wedding photography. So I have 3 similar bodies, and that's for continuity with editing and the look of the images afterwards. 2 on my harness with different lenses on, and I have a 3rd, usually at the ceremony, by the ceremony table, the ultra wide, because I don't need ultra wide that much, but for the ceremony room I think it's essential, and it gives that extra look that your other 2 bodies can't get. So I suppose you could say that 3 camera bodies allow 3 different views, 3 different lenses. And that all depends on what lenses you've used. If you're using a zoom, then maybe you don't need 3. I'd also recommend getting light bodies and equipment. By halfway through the day, you are really relishing lighter, smaller equipment. And these Nikon mirrorless cameras are perfect, I think. Ergonomically, the size, the weight, perfect grip size, really is perfect for event photography. Then we come on to lenses. This is the only lens you need for event photography of any kind. The 24-70 2.8. You have the 24, so it's a wide, and all the way to 70, which is a small telephoto, all at 2.8. So you've got your low light capability, and your depth of field you can achieve with the 70 at 2.8 is good as well. So for the first few years of event photography, this is the only lens I had or really needed. This really is the bread and butter lens of the event industry, or a lot of areas of photography really. It covers such the perfect range, 24-70. The second lens I got early on in my career was a 50 1.4G. Now I have this Nikon 50 1.8, which I soon got with my mirrorless system. So the 50mm focal length is my favourite. because it's wide enough to give some context, but narrow enough to give some really great portraits and subject isolation. So if you're going to get one prime, I would recommend a 50, 1.8, 1.4, 1.2. So if you use the 24-70 and the 50, you really have a great portrait isolating low light capability lens and all bread and butter for everything else. Of course, now I've evolved this beast of a lens. Don't know if you can see it, a 50 1.2. So basically, you can halve your ISO compared to the 1.8 version, which you may think in today's mirrorless technology, you don't really need that. But sometimes towards the end of the day, with low light, every stock of light is really essential to get clean looking images. Now the drawbacks to this lens are obvious. It's the size and the weight. I soon get tired of carrying this around, but I do enjoy using it. I've even dared to do group photos at 1.2 when you have the people lined up in the same depth of field, and you can create some beautiful photos. Though really, the 1.8 does 90% of what this does. And we have a video comparing these two in depth, which you should check out if you have any more interest in this. So at the start of the day, with the preparation, such as the hotel rooms and venue details, you do need a wide angle lens. If a 24 is good enough, it's fine. Although I prefer using primes now for a different kind of look. So I'll use the 28 1.4, which I'm filming with here, and I love it. 28 seems to be the perfect focal length for me to get the venue shots, the preparation shots in smaller rooms, and the hotel rooms, more often than not, quite dark, with the light coming in one side and really subdued lighting. So I do like shooting 1.8 to get clean looking shadows and images, and you don't have to use flash as much when you use prime lenses, which is true to a certain extent. So the ceremony rooms in the UK vary a lot, and they can be really small registry offices where even a 50mm is too narrow. So if I know the venue and know what I'm going into, again the 24-70 covers a good range there. Or I'd use a prime, the 28. I always find 35 too narrow in a lot of situations actually. I'm not really sure how. It is quite a common stereotype that wedding photographer would use a 35 and an 85. But I find the 35 too narrow for the wide shots, and 85 I need too much space to get the distance to get the subject in the frame properly. So I don't have either of those. I used to use the 85 1.8, and it's a fantastic lens, great subject isolation. Although I needed so much distance between the couple and myself that I often didn't have the room, and it was harder to communicate with them because wedding couples aren't models. You know, they don't know always what to do. You've got to have a rapport with them to get the most out of them. With an 85, I'm too far away. I kept on going forward and back, and it was exhausting and wasn't really effective. So for portraits, I use again 50. 51.8 is a great medium for this because you get great shallow depth of field, and you don't have to be too far away from them to even do full length shots. So this is also one of my recent purchases, 14 to 24 2.8, part of the Trinity, and I find this lens more useful than I'd ever expect. So again, for the tight hotel rooms when you don't have much room, having a wider focal length than 24, you don't realise you need it until you actually have one. And for venues, like I said, the small registry office venues, or even a church, to get the full spectrum of the venue, sometimes even 24 isn't wide enough. That's why I have a third body with this lens on. I used to use the 14 to 30 f4, which was good, but in some lower light situations it just wasn't quite there. Some of the noise was in the shadow. So that's why I recently got this 2.8 version, and sometimes I've actually used this as the main lens during the ceremony because I like to get the guests both sides of the bride and groom in all in one photo. So with the Kiss the Bride photo, I start off really wide to capture both sides and the venue, all the people, and then I zoom in quickly to isolate a couple for their first kiss. Sometimes I can do it with primes, depending on the venue. I would use the 28 and then crop in to make a different composition. Although it's much better with the zoom, obviously, much more versatile. Again, every venue is different. Every venue has different space between you and the couple. So you have the bride and groom, then the registrar. So that space behind all that is your space. It's basically your space to operate in. Sometimes it's almost non-existent. Most often than not, I'm crunched against the wall, trying to get a wide enough picture to get the room in and the guests. So again, the 14 to 24, it just makes life so much easier. And when it comes to the evening part of the day, light starts to draw in, especially in winter. So again, I use the 50 and the 28, often at wide open, and that's the beauty of modern lenses and great glass. So you can shoot wide open and it's sharp, and you have low light capability and a gorgeous depth of field. Of course, again, the 24 to 72.8 is very capable at that. Although I'd recommend using a flash to get really nice clean looking images, whereas with prime lenses, I don't need flash as much. I much prefer the look of natural light or using the light available and really harnessing the low light capabilities of these lenses. So I do always have a flash on one of my bodies, in case even my primes aren't good enough for lower light. Of course, using flash gives a different look. And I know some photographers who just use flash all the time in most situations because that's their look, that's what they want to portray. That kind of magazine, ultra glossy, shiny. But for me, I use this as sparingly as possible because that's not my style. And flash, even with mirrorless systems, can be quite tricky and quite varied. You have to be really quite tech savvy to be able to utilize flash effectively. And annoyingly, they are quite heavy as well because this one's got 4 batteries in, and it is a bit of a cumbersome weight if you don't use it. So at the moment, I do really enjoy using primes. Now that's for a few reasons. I want my style to be consistent and have that dreamy, airy look that clients often enjoy about my work and when they see my website. And so I do shoot and enjoy shooting at 1.8 or belows. 1.2s and 1.4s are really my favourites. Now in reality, the 1.8s or even the 2.8 Trinity is plenty good enough. You can get fantastic results with this. And I'm sure there's a lot of photographers out there that use the 2.8 Trinity and achieve fantastic results. But I think Lars really pointed this out to me, that I enjoy using primes and the challenge of it. Now that's putting more obstacles in my way because with primes you don't have that versatility of a zoom. I've been doing wedding photography for 12 years now, so for extra entertainment for myself during the shoot, using primes, that extra challenge to get those incredible results of the shallowest depth of field as possible for certain things is really the enjoyment of the day for me as a photographer. You have to think that couples don't always want obliterated backgrounds. You know, they've spent a lot of money on the venue to make it nice and all the guests are looking good. I don't want them completely blurred in the background. Only recently I taken a shoot of a couple with a gorgeous backdrop with a castle in the background, and I used the 50s and you can just about see the castle in the background. I also used the 24 to 70 and I brought in the background, so I had a higher aperture. The one that they preferred was the one showing more context, so they could see the castle in the fields and beautiful backdrops. If you completely destroy the backgrounds and completely blur them out, event photography, people want to see what's going on. Sure, they want subject isolation as well at certain times. You have to remember that event photography is more about capturing content. So the harness, let me find it, is really a big part of my equipment. So over the years, I found the best way to wear 2 cameras or have 2 cameras on you is a harness. And make sure you get a good one because it's holding a lot of expensive equipment. But more than that, it's about the distribution of weight on your shoulders. So Let me try and put it on now. So if you've got the wider straps at the top, it distributes the weight across your whole body. And when you're using big fat lenses, after a few hours, you're going to start feeling it. I used to have really bad back pains and body pains the day after when I used smaller harnesses or over bags or just even the camera straps. But with the harness, the day afterwards, sometimes I don't even know. I've done a wedding before. If you're draining your energy just carrying your cameras, then you're losing your concentration. And it's so useful having two different bodies and two different lenses, especially if you're shooting primes. At your utility, you just lift it up and you've got it. You want this one, you lift it up and you've got it. Like a cowboy. And it looks really cool as well. Guests always think you look really professional and a bit stupid sometimes. But it's really useful than anything else. Sometimes I wear my jacket over it so you can't see the straps. And it just looks like I've magically got two cameras under my jacket. So the bad thing is when you use loose clothing or a loose shirt or even loose jumpers, what happens is, I'll try and demonstrate it, so when it rides up, it gets caught in your jumper sometimes. Not all the time, but especially if you've got a loose shirt, when it rides up it gets stuck and you kind of have to just release it and carry on. So when you pull up the camera, pull it away from your body more so it doesn't get caught. But it's a small problem compared to the benefits of having a harness. Of course, there's smaller things now, like, you know, you have lots of memory cards, you have spare batteries that are fully charged, basically everything you need in case something goes wrong with your current equipment. You know, if worse should happen, you drop a camera and the lens smashes, oh, you've got another one, it's okay, you can claim the insurance. And that's really important as well, to have insurance on your equipment, either on your home contents or a particular insurance just for your photography stuff. So when worse should happen, then you don't need to worry too much. So when it comes to bags, this is the mothership, I call it. It's the Lowepro BP A40AW2, and it holds so much stuff in a really compact, weatherproof kit. There's loads of lenses, but this stays in my car, and I take out what I need for that shoot, not just for a wedding, for any event, because I don't want to carry around all my stuff all the time. But I take this with my car as well. So this is the Lowepro BP150, and it's so small but it carries so much. I've often carried two bodies and lenses in here to hold my third body and lens, or other lenses I think I'll need. So this often just goes straight to the ceremony room, hidden beneath the table or something like that. So I've got my third body there, and I've got my other lenses and equipment when I need it. Spare batteries, memory cards, you name it, it goes in here. So this is kind of goes on location. So I don't use tripods unless I'm doing a bit of filming, but I find this, I always leave this in my car, the monopod, extendable monopod. So when I do a big group photo of everyone, I need to be a lot higher than everyone else. The venues don't sometimes have that. So what I do, I just use this, put this wide angle on this, put it as high as I can on a timer and have it really high up, and it effectively gets the job of being much higher up in a building. Of course, this is, so I talked about all the technology I use for certain artistic pursuits, although how to shoot a wedding is different from what gear you use. One day I may reveal how to shoot a wedding with all my experience over the 12 years to get the best out of the day and all the different problems that come up, and problem solving with time and venues and light and weather. But having equipment that is versatile and having a range of lenses and bodies to fall back on does make the day easier. This is just the way I shoot at this particular time for a particular look, and for the challenge and fun of using primes during a wedding day to keep myself entertained, basically. So I hope this video has been helpful if you're starting out in wedding photography, or you're a seasoned pro looking to how to mix up your game a bit. I'm always interested to see how other photographers shoot and their methods and what gear they use. I'm a gearhead as well, so it's always fun to see.